first time I heard your journey, it was really interesting for me to know that you not only decided to go for an ID, but then, at one point you thought it could not happen.
Yeah.
There was a break. You took up a job.
It's just that it's very overwhelming and it's a very emotional journey, and sometimes go back, it's quite difficult.
Hi Malvika.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Oh, fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. First of all, congratulations. You're going to an ID animation thing that you've dreamed about. I'm recalling the conversation that we've had a few days ago.
Yeah. Yeah. It's still surreal, but it's happening, I guess.
Yes, totally understand the energy and the excitement here. And I'm glad that you made it, and super duper interested in your journey. And the first time I heard your journey, like when we spoke over the call, it was really interesting for me to know that you not only decided to go for an ID, but then there was some amount of time, at one point you thought it could not happen, right?
Yeah.
There was a break. There was a break. You took
Yeah.
up a job, right?
Okay.
So super interesting. And I want to take you back to your journey when it started. And I want to know everything about the journey, along with, the times that you thought it's not possible for me to get into an ID, to the point where you thought, okay, now I can do this. So I want to cover all of those things. Okay. So I'm super excited for this episode. So let's get into it.
Well, to begin with, I think before I fell in love with design as a concept, I fell in love with storytelling.
Okay.
So when I was in school, I had this group of juniors who I would just narrate stories to, like movies that I watched and uh, basically books that I read. I wasn't a voracious reader, but I used to read books and I just quote. This was like 6th standard and 8th standard, stuff like that. And some of the kids bought books, like forced their parents to buy them books because of this, and they went and told my parents. So this was a huge thing at home. And we didn't have proper career guidance in school. It was just science and commerce. There was no humanities, there was no arts.
Yeah.
And people who knew to draw went into architecture. That was it. And architecture is a wonderful field, and but it wasn't. A lot of people went into architecture because they like to draw, not because they liked architecture specifically. And I did try for NATA as well, but I came to know about it at the last minute and I didn't have any preparation. I looked at one YouTube video on how to draw 1 point perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And I went for it, and I couldn't get into any government colleges.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I got into NID Pondicherry for computer science engineering.
Okay.
So it was, obvious at home, like government school, government college, and that's a higher priority, and it's a wonderful college as well. And at the time, I thought, you just need a job to survive, and you make money, and with that money, you have fun and you live a nice life, and you'll be happy with that. This is how everybody's life would probably go in this way. This was my concept. It never occurred to me that you can actually like your job and like learn how to grow in your job. Nothing of that sort occurred to me. So I went into the college, and like kids over there were very passionate about coding. And I saw people, like kids who learned how to code since they were in 8th standard.
Wow.
And this was something they were looking forward to. And there was a kid who told me that he made a game, a 3D game, and it's very difficult. I was like, oh, okay, it must be passion, I guess. Or not passion. I was like, oh, okay, these are the kids I'm going to study with, and I should try to fit in. I should try my level best. This was the whole idea that I had. And this one fine day, Intel, the company, came into our college for a seminar, and they were talking about, they were talking passionately about how they coded drones to make constellations in the sky, and they were talking about it so well, and that's when it hit me. Like, you can be passionate about your job, and you can actually like your job. If I go into this field, I'm going to go for a 9 to 5 job,
Mm.
try to survive, and then come back.
Mm.
And I don't want to just survive. I want to do something about it. And I didn't know what to do, but I knew this was not what I wanted to do. And I had so much respect for the people over there. And eventually, I started going and talking to everybody in my, like, the toppers in my class. Once a person was coding, like one of the toppers were coding in their free time after the class, and I was drawing in another corner of the class in my free time. And I went to him and I was like, "Hey, what are you doing? Like, this portion is not there in our syllabus right now. It's like in the seventh semester. It's yet to come."
Mm.
And I was like, "No, I like to do this in my free time. This is what I like to do in my free time. I like to learn how to code." And I was like, "Hi, I like to draw when I'm free." And I was like, "Oh no, I like to draw when I'm free. I like to learn how to draw when I'm free. I should draw. I should go to a field where I can draw.
Mm.
I could probably grow if I take up a job that has drawing."
Mm.
So that's when I decided, I did and eventually I was in this dance club, and we had to do thematic dances, and nobody had a clue. None of us had a clue.
Mm.
And so that's when I started researching, and we came up with negative reinforcement and positive reinforcement. And that became part of the dance for the theme, for the thematic dance. And uh, later on, I came to know that these are all instruments that you use for story writing, which I can
Okay.
probably use in animation as well.
Okay.
Like, how do you
I'm
present a
gonna
story?
ask you a small thing here. Uh, for the
Sure.
listeners, I want you to explain what is negative reinforcement and that positive thing that you just talked about, because I don't think many of us
So
understand here.
it's okay. It's like
Right.
negative reinforcement is where you show when you try to convey a message. For example,
Mm.
let's take the theme of the dance itself. The competition was organized by the election commission of that district,
Okay.
and they said we need to inspire people to vote.
Okay.
It's a dance competition, but you can do all other kinds of stuff as well, like skit or drama or anything. And our faculty was very sure that we should do a skit, but it's a dance competition. So I came up with a plan on showing the difficulties that we have in our country. Like, you just need an abstract idea. So what if we show the problems that we're facing right now, one by one, and then say we can come over, like we can solve all these problems to a great extent if we choose our leader right. So do cast your votes to
Mm.
the right person. So it's just basically inspiring people. So that idea was conveyed by showing all the negative factors that would happen if we don't do what is expected of us to do.
Mm.
A positive reinforcement would be to show all the nice things that would happen if you vote.
Mm.
So yeah, that is what negative and positive reinforcement is. I hope I explained it right.
Okay. All right. So once you've started, doing this, getting involved with dance groups in your college, right?
Mhm.
Hmm. So what happened after that?
I didn't know that I liked animation at that point. I just knew that I liked storytelling and I liked to draw. It never occurred to me that I could put two and two together and do that as a job.
Hmm.
And it was difficult when the first time I realized I wanted to go into the creative field, I thought I need to go into BFA. I need to take a BFA, Bachelor's in Fine Arts.
Hmm.
That is the only way I can make money through art.
Hmm.
I didn't have anybody at NID, no personal relatives or seniors or anybody at NID to call and ask or even know about the college at that time.
Hmm.
So I just knew about NIFT, and NIFT is fashion technology, and I knew
Right.
I didn't want to do fashion technology.
Right.
So I didn't know what my options were. And one day I think I sat down and my sister asked me to just draw something creative. You like drawing, why don't you try something? You know you want to go into drawing.
mm,
So why don't you draw something of your own instead of copying? Because until then, I thought realism was everything. You
mm,
draw a realistic eye and you're a perfect artist. You draw a realistic face, a portrait. You're a wonderful artist. So she was like, why don't you try to create something? So I tried drawing something creative, and I drew a small girl inside a glass jar, and she was trying to stitch wings onto her back. And in that jar itself, there were some butterflies flying around. She
mm,
doesn't have wings, and she's trying to stitch it on. And in the bottom, I wrote "trying to fit in." This was my first creative piece of work. I
mm.
showed it to my family, and they were very worried. They were like, "Are you okay? Is everything okay?" And that's when I was
Right.
like, "I'm not okay. I really have to get out." And that's when I like tried to make more and more creative works, and I tried to research how the creative field works, like
Mm,
people who draw, who are graphic illustrators, people who draw in comic books.
mm,
I used to read a lot of comic books, graphic novels, so I started listening to interviews of those people,
mm.
and they were saying how important a portfolio is.
Right.
And you give a portfolio to a company when you go,
Yeah.
and your portfolio is all that matters.
Right.
And that was intriguing. So I kept drawing more creative works instead of copying. And I realized all of them has a narrative, like some or the other form of message, like trying to creep in. And I
Mm,
loved that. I really liked that it was doing that. And did some research, finalized on animation. Like, this is
mm,
what I want to do. And I started listening to interviews of many people who worked in pre-production who also had a YouTube channel, like Laura Price, Ross Draws, Sam Does Art.
right.
Uh, they're wonderful artists, and they talk about their journey. And I learned about the pipeline of animation, like
Mm,
from which department to which department, what job goes where. So I
mm,
realized, there is character design, there's first the storyline making, and even the storyboarding is just basically very rough doodles at the first stage.
yeah.
And I thought the finished work was coming out of just like that.
Yeah.
That's not how it works. There's a lot of uh, filtering going on in the pre-production area, and I was really fascinated by it.
Mm,
There's concept art, and there's character design, there's creature design, there's machine design, and
yeah.
all of those things. I loved world building, and so that was a wonderful time that I had. And I used to listen to this, and I guess in third year, I realized I wanted to go into animation. I knew fourth year I had to make a project,
Mm,
so I was in a group of two. So there was another girl who wanted to go to IAS, and I told her, like, we can either make a project that is mediocre and try to pass, or I can make a game so that I can
mm.
sneak in design into my coding project
Mm,
and use that in my portfolio later on.
right. I like what you. I
And
like how
that's
you're thinking.
since since my partner also wanted to go for, like, she wasn't interested in being an engineer, and she
Right.
wanted to be an I so she was like, okay, fine, I'll prepare for IAS, like sitting beside you. I'll do the documentation of the project, everything. You just do the coding and the designing and everything. So I took up two Udemy courses. I made a 2D game and a 3D game in Unity 3D.
Okay.
And I went to my faculty, and they were really nice people, but they were very skeptical about my work because others were coding for, like, saving lives,
Mm,
drones to go into natural disasters and like
mm,
collecting people. And I here just made a game, and they're like, "Why a game?
uh,
Why do you want to make a game?" And I'm like, "There are, this." I had to explain what
right.
entertainment industry is, like what I knew the entertainment industry is, and there's actual money at stake for every creative decision that you take.
Mm,
So, yeah. So, and everything has storytelling nowadays. Even if you sell a product, you don't just list out the good qualities. You tell it in a story so that
mm,
people empathize with it and then buy it.
mm.
So, so yeah, eventually I convinced them, and it came out well, and the game came out well, and yeah, that's how the 3D game came out. I then yeah, I used to play chess in college. I was in the chess team of the college, and I represented my college twice in
Wow.
inter and NT. it, there's a lot of imposter syndrome when it comes to the chess part, but still, I really enjoyed playing chess, and
Mm, mm,
so I decided I wanted to make creative. This was my journey of making more and more passion projects to put it in my portfolio, because
mm,
I kept having, I just had this feeling that portfolio is going to be so important. I
mm.
didn't know about NID at the time, but I was just working towards my portfolio. And I'm so glad that I did, because right now I understand we had very little time after that results were announced. We
Yeah,
had like few days.
yeah,
So if I would have done it after the results were announced, this was like no
impossible.
projects would have been in there.
Yeah, it would be
So
impossible.
yeah, so I wanted to draw chess pieces as human beings or like characters who has feelings, and I tried to uh, give those people features of the powers of the chess piece.
Mm,
For example, how pawn is a shapeshifter, and
mm,
because pawn piece can go to the other end of the chessboard and can be switched to another power piece, and how queen is a warrior queen because she can move any sides, and how
mm,
the king is a cannibal and he's gluttonous and can't move around with some. That's all. That's storyline I went for, and I really enjoyed working on it, and I presented that along with the
mm.
fourth year final year project to my faculties, and they were shocked to see artwork in a
Right,
coding project.
right.
But I guess they liked it in the end,
Mm,
and I was so glad that it came out, you know, however
mm.
it did. And then the pandemic hit. I was very ready to go to animation out of college, and then the pandemic
Right.
hit, and I
Mm,
lost my mom a few months before I graduated as well.
mm.
So and it was a time when people were losing jobs, and
Wow.
other people told my family it's not a right time to
Mm.
change streams right now. So yeah, I ended up taking a job,
Yeah, very sorry to
and
know about
I
your mom.
worked. Yes, thank you. And I took up the job that they were really sweet people. The company was really nice, but it was the opposite direction to where I was going,
Mm,
and it was a very difficult time. And, but it was okay. I mean, we powered through stuff. And uh, I used to go to job in the morning, and my job it was 8 to 5 job, and
mm,
I would rest for an hour, and I would draw.
mm,
That was my way of escape. I
mm.
used to draw. I mean, I used to read a lot of. I enjoy reading a lot of books. I enjoy watching a lot of fantasy movies. So I drew myself into fantasy backgrounds, because
Mm,
that was again another project that I used in my portfolio.
mm,
So and I think during the pandemic, my sister is a doctor, so she refused to come home. This was a time when
mm.
pandemic um, fever, everybody was very panicky
Right.
about the pandemic breakout.
Uh-huh.
And my sister is a doctor, so she was in Osmania Medical College. She was
Mm.
a PG there. It's in Hyderabad,
Yeah.
and so all the samples used to go to that place from
Yeah.
Telangana,
Mm.
and she refused to come home. She said like I'm going to stay back and work. It was yeah. So it was quite difficult. I was so proud of her, and I drew her, and I drew something for her,
Mm.
and I just googled on what all are the trending hashtags for COVID, and just to inspire any doctors out there who are risking their lives. So I put all those hashtags, and a few days later, I got a message from somebody saying that they're working for UNICEF and they'd like to feature my work.
Oh,
And I thought it's a scam at first. And
right.
I thought, oh, it's okay. It's fine. It's a very personal work. It's fine. The person I wanted to show to is fine. If
Mm.
she's seen it, and that's where that's the important part. And I said, okay,
Right.
yeah, sure. They told me to send the raw file to them, and it ended up coming on UNICEF, the
Wow.
Instagram page,
Wow.
as a story at first. I was very stoked about it. Next day they posted. There were a couple of images, like illustrations by different people, and the next day they just posted my work as a post in the UNICEF
Amazing.
official page.
Amazing.
It, it was exhilarating. Yeah, it was.
Mm.
I was very overwhelmed. I still am, because it was not meant for anything more than just being truly personal work, but
Yeah.
it ended up getting a lot of love, and a lot of people, a lot of doctors relating to it. Uh, that was very sweet.
Mm.
I'm glad I could do the least I mean,
Yeah.
at least something from my side.
It also means that you were able to capture the whole mood properly because it was so relatable for all the people that you've done a good job with that. Then.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That means a lot. Yeah, so that was another project that was
Mm.
there in
Mm.
my portfolio.
Mm.
And when I realized, I wanted to go to NID, I thought I'll work 2 years in the company, I'll complete it,
Mm.
and I'll maybe try for NID. I didn't,
Mm.
as I said, I didn't know anybody there. So
Mm.
I went to the NID website, and there's a portfolio tab over there,
Mm.
and a bunch of portfolios and Behance links of all the students who are there. So
Right.
I made an Excel sheet of all the seniors, like all the portfolios that I liked, and I searched their names on Instagram or checked if they have an email ID attached to it. So I ended up messaging about 19 seniors, like
Mm.
19 students who were already at NID,
Mm.
and I made an Excel sheet with the possible Instagram handles and if an email ID is attached to it, that as well. And I realized a lot of them are ex-students of NID. They're not
Mm.
currently pursuing MDiS in animation,
Mm.
but that's okay. I mean, I can message them. So I message them, and I realized the worst thing they can do is block me or like not reply, ignore, which is fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I messaged like 20 people, and I got reply from almost nine students, which is fine. I understand that they would be busy, with their projects as well.
That's still
And
a
so
very high
I said I
response
have.
rate, to be honest.
Yes, it is. I wasn't expecting that, but there were people who were like, why did you choose animation? And they would say, I like
Yeah.
storytelling. I
Mm.
like to draw, and that was it. And I didn't get more from them because they were have because maybe they were busy and they didn't feel like they need to explain their
Yeah.
whole journey to
Yeah.
a random stranger on the internet.
Mm.
So that
So,
was also there. So
uh,
some of them were really took the time.
yeah. So I'm gonna add in a bit here
Yeah,
because
you wanted to say?
because it's really really true, guys, that super busy when you get into an ID, any design college, and for that matter, an ID. It will make you work a lot. Okay, I'm not scaring you or anything here, but do understand that people who are there don't feel bad if they're not getting back to you.
Yeah.
It is not to be taken personally because I went through the process and I went through design education. Uh, I've reached out to many people and very less people respond. It's not their fault. It's not because they don't want to do it. It's because they
Mhm,
have a
mhm.
lot of work to do. Because once you get into design education, you realize that you have to change how you think. You need to do a lot of hard work, hours and hours of work that you need to put in to get better at it. Don't be discouraged if they don't respond to you. Please keep at it, and for sure somebody or the other would definitely respond. This is for sure. If you keep trying, then you'll definitely get a response.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. You shouldn't stop trying. Like, you shouldn't
Mm.
message like three people and like stop at it.
Yeah.
It's important that you keep going because, especially if you come to animation, it's a very time-consuming job. Like the production itself, it's legit time. Not just the thinking part. It's like
Yeah.
the whole production itself is very time-consuming, frame by frame 2D animation. And I've heard NID is very interested in 2D animation, so that's like frame by frame drawing, and it's like
Yeah.
12 FPS. It's a lot of work. So it's very understandable that even there were a few who were very sweet and like told and said that I'm sorry, I'm really busy, but you can call me and I can talk to you over call so
Yeah.
that we can talk it over in like 5-10 minutes. And that was very sweet. So I ended up talking to a lot of people like that, and they told me their experiences and what they were going through, and I was like, okay, let's do anything now. So
Nice.
I was desperate for uh,
Mm.
a mentor because I realized if I'm working and studying for NID, some days I'm going to be tired. And if
Mm.
I don't have the right self motivation, it's going to be difficult to keep going. I learned all the fundamentals. I had good mentors, and I learned all the fundamentals, and I practiced whenever I could.
Mm.
And it was tiring, obviously, but every time I went back to work, I kept thinking that all this effort that goes into this field, if it was in the field that I liked, I would have actually been interested in growing.
Right.
So that kind of pushed me to draw at night
Right.
and practice and everything.
Right.
I realized anatomy was important, so I took up a class on Udemy for learning anatomy. Um, I understood storyboard is very important for
Mm.
animation because
Mm.
in all the other fields you may need to learn storyboarding to probably pass the exam,
Yeah.
but in animation you need to learn storyboarding because it can be your job at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
just make storyboards.
Yeah.
So storyboard is important. Don't take it lightly, and you need to
Yes.
do it fast. It's not just the the difficulty is doing it fast,
Mm.
and learning what kind of shots is important for each emotion. So I took up a class, and I thought if I'm learning storyboarding, I better learn it from somebody who has studio experience. So I went to Gumroad and I found an
Mm.
artist called Mitchell Lu.
Mm.
He has experience working in Disney and all,
Mm.
and a few other studios as well. He has a pretty good course, and I would recommend it.
Mm.
Um, so I learned what a long shot or a close up, extreme close up, mid shot is, and when to use them. I learned what a Dutch angle is in a
Mm.
storyboard,
Right.
and so yeah, this is how I covered the area of storyboarding. And another way that I practiced was I listed out random words like
Mm.
urban city, water sports,
Mm.
volleyball,
Mm.
stage, just
Mm.
random words, like 40 of them. And I
Okay.
tried drawing a composition for each of the words
Nice.
with something under 20 minutes. So it's important that you learn to draw with
Yeah.
the time given.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it doesn't matter what idea you have if you don't present it. They're
Within the
not
time.
gonna know what was there in your head. Yeah.
True. True.
So and then I listened to a lot of interviews of a lot of artists, like on the background while I was working. So
Mm.
this would go on one side, and while I
Mm.
drew, so I was able to see like storyboard artists of game studios, like Riot Games.
Mm. I like how you have gone deeper into the field that you really want to get into, because you're listening to different professionals who are doing, already the kind of work that you would do after you graduate. If you take up animation design, the right thing that you've done, that has helped you also, which every student must do. Uh, that whatever field that they're taking, they need to get deeper into it. So that's something commendable that you've done here while you were
Thank you.
preparing.
Thank you. I think it's important to learn for the industry and
Hmm.
not learn to just qualify the exam.
Yeah.
Even if you learn for the industry, there's still a lot more to learn. Even it's always there's a lot more to learn. Understand that it's not like you watched one video on perspective and all of a sudden how perspective works.
Hmm.
There's a
Yeah.
lot more to learn at every point.
Yeah.
And it's important that you come to terms with it. So this was not something I did when I went for Nata, because I literally went with just watching one video, and
Yeah.
that was not enough.
Yeah.
And I ex- so once the exam was over, I think I experimented with a lot of clay
Okay.
and just on sculpting the
So
characters
you
that I
mean after the
sketched.
first round was over?
Yeah, after the first round was over,
Okay.
I started experimenting with clay. Like, so if I design a character, like if a character description is given,
Hmm.
how do I design it and how do I create it? How does it look in
Hmm.
3D?
Hmm.
So just went in and out, which actually kind of helped out in the end
Mhm.
because that was a studio test question.
That's great.
Because a lot of times I've seen like people who want to go into animation, who has, including me,
Mm.
Like when we start off, we think that if I want to learn animation, I have to learn the 3D software today. But by the end of
Yeah.
the night, I should make Disney quality 3D animation tonight. That's not how it works. There's a lot of uh,
Right.
there's a lot of planning that goes behind it. There's a lot
Mm.
of pre-production area that goes
Right.
behind it, and that's where I fell in love with
Mm.
animation. The pre-production area. At first, I know that I don't have a holistic view. I know that there's still a lot more to like learn, and views may change in the future. But
Right.
yeah,
What did they give you in the studio test?
in the studio test, the first question was giving a movie review. They showed an animated video, and we had to identify the type of animation and give a movie review about it. And it was quite interesting because it didn't feel like a test.
Mm.
I told that to myself before I walked into the test as well. I was so scared. I told myself, "Hey, this is not engineering. You got this."
Yeah.
And went in there, and it was nice questions. And the second question was storyboarding,
Mm.
which was fun.
Right.
And the third question was sculpting, which was again fun.
Fun.
And this time, at one point, I lost track of time, and in
Mm.
a nice way, in the nicest way possible, I lost track of time
Mhm.
because I was doing it, and I was like, "This is so nice. It doesn't feel like a test." And I realized, "Oh, it's a test." And yeah, so and I think it's quite important to keep a level head. I mean, like
Mm.
to be in the moment and
Yeah.
to have fun
Mm.
and not let the fear you know cripple you.
Mm.
Because the first time I walked into like NID DAT exam, the person who was sitting in front of me has like turned around before the exam and asked me like, "What did you do your bachelor's in?" And I said engineering. And I asked him, and he said fine arts, and I was like, "Oh no, this is."
Right.
Like he probably learned how to draw for like 4 years, and
Yeah.
and I've been going in an opposite direction for 4 years. So it's
Mm.
okay. There are going to, and do not look around. And during the exam, it's important
Mm.
because.
Mm.
And on the other side, I could hear people talking about 3D softwares like Blender, Maya, Unity 3D, and I'm like, oh, Unity 3D is
Yeah.
something I worked on, but the rest I haven't worked on yet, and that's okay. That's okay. Go through
Right.
this test first.
Right.
So yeah, that was it. And
Mm.
it's important to learn how things move
Mm.
before you learn the software to move them, because
Yeah.
otherwise they're gonna look wonky.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the idea is to commit your time to learning and knowing that there's still a lot more to learn, no matter how much you learn, and just
Mm.
enjoying the process of it. That's what's gonna,
Right.
that's what's kept me going.
Yeah.
Because when I quit my job in January, it was very difficult. It was very scary, just stopping a source of income right there
Yeah.
and just trusting that the exams would go well.
Mm.
So, so yeah, it's important to like what you do and
Yeah.
just go research about it.
And after let's say they've given you a storyboard, the sculpting, and what did they ask you to do? What did they ask to sculpt?
They gave a character description
Mhm.
and uh, they told us to draw the character
Mhm.
and then sculpt that character.
With which material?
They gave us, I think it's clay, like the natural kind.
Okay.
It's not the store bought air dry clay. It's the thing that you do pottery with.
Okay. Okay.
It's so silty, and it's a very good quality. I think it's called terracotta clay. If I'm not wrong, I'm
Okay.
really sorry if I'm wrong. But
Okay.
yeah,
All right.
and they gave us like a small tub of water. And
Mm.
it was really nice.
Mm.
Oh, and I also had an animated movie in my portfolio. I forgot to tell about that. But yeah,
Okay.
that was there too.
Mhm.
So that's how I experimented with animation.
Yeah, I was about to ask, how did you make that movie? Because you said you do not know any softwares. How did you make?
Yeah, it was a 2D movie, and
Mm.
like I said, until then I did some freelance works on small animation, like for name revealing ceremony of a baby, and
Mm.
so the name would appear.
Mm.
And I used to do that in Procreate. There's like animation option in that, so you
Yeah.
draw each frame.
Yeah.
It's basically used for making like GIFs or GIFs,
Mm.
however one would pronounce it.
Yeah.
And but I kind of ended up using it for a movie. So
Mm-hmm.
what happened was that one of my mentors, the mentor that who coached me, was very nice enough to call me for a project that he had in mind, for a passion project that he had in mind.
Mm.
So he called a few people in his class. There were like four of us, and he said, "I want to make a mock product, a UI UX mock product to enhance women's safety. And for that, we need to do and Malvika is going to be the storyboard artist for that."
Mm.
So I was not there as a UI UX aspirant. I was there as a storyboard artist for this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I said, okay. And so we ended up learning, like reading a bunch of articles. We had a virtual whiteboard where we put in post-its and about the notes that we had sections for each people, and each people would collect whatever information they could find after reading a lot, and we would put it onto this board, and we would read everybody's notes. We would organize it
Mm.
virtually. All of this was virtually done.
Mm.
And since the pandemic was there, the lockdown was there, we were not able to go door to door and interview people. So we created a survey and we named it behavioral analysis. So
Mm.
that we didn't, it was for women's safety, but we didn't say
Right.
it's for women's safety because
Yeah.
we had a feeling we might be sending it to potential people who would have, people who would have probably harassed
Mm.
other people. So it's important to not give it away because
Yeah.
they may come off as heroic.
Yeah.
So we named it as behavioral psychology, and then we asked a bunch of questions on if they've been uncomfortable in certain situations, etc. And then at the end of the survey, we asked like, is it okay if we call you for an interview? And we got 100 plus 118 or 16 responses in total. Out of that, 8 women came forward to share their
Mm.
stories.
Mm.
And we did interview a few um, others as well who were not um survivors, but
Okay.
probably abusers. We don't know, but probably abusers. So we learned how to interview them, how to interrogate them. We have to be very careful
Yeah.
since it's a very sensitive topic,
Yeah.
and if they're coming off as if they're saying something that we don't like, we
Mm.
shouldn't show it on our face or our tone.
Mm.
We should talk as if we understand them
Mm.
and then make them say more so that our data is clear. And
Right.
maybe at the end of the interview, we can tell them, we're making a product so that people can survive, people like you.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that was the whole approach. And
Mm.
uh, and out of the 8 women, there was one woman who reported her case. The others didn't.
Oh.
And
Okay.
so and so I was like, this is your data, Malvika, make a story, make a storyboard so that we can show it to others and we can encourage open conversations
Mm.
we were focusing on teenagers specifically.
Mm.
So we can encourage conversations amongst
Right.
parents and the kids. So I made a story and I made a storyboard and they were happy with it. So I thought, might as well make a movie out of it. So I made a
Mm.
movie.
Okay.
I made a movie and it was I had to learn principles of animation like
Mm.
quite a lot of times because it's easy to learn, it's difficult to master.
Mm.
And I still there's still a lot more to learn, but I tried my best and I made a movie and I made sure that the movie is not very production heavy. So there was no colors. It was not there were very few colors used, like it was mostly grayscale,
Mm.
and there was no composition as such. There not a lot of background art in it. So I tried to optimize the pre-production so that the production is smooth, and I just have to keep drawing and drawing to complete it. I don't have to go back to pre-production, fix something, come back and change a lot.
Yeah.
And the post-production happened in InShots, the app. I just put everything together and
Okay.
stitched it all together, and
Mm-hmm.
I chose a royalty-free music for the
Mm.
background.
Mm.
but it did feel nice at the end when it showed like a movie by Malvika Mohan. Like
Yeah.
that felt good. That really felt good, like after a very long time.
What was the time frame of this whole project?
Uh, we worked together for like 7 months,
Hmm.
and production took 1 month
Hmm.
because I was drawing like crazy.
Hmm.
And but the pre-production took longer
Hmm.
because there's a lot of decision making going on there.
Yes.
For the production, I basically I realized I as I said earlier, I used to listen to interviews of a lot of artists in the industry, and I learned that during production they act out the scenes in
Yeah.
proper expression, and they use that as reference.
References. Yes.
And so because you don't have a lot of, it's not like Pinterest is filled with what you want to draw for that particular scene. So I acted out for reference and I came back and I drew it
Hmm.
using that as reference. So that's how that movie was made. And
Hmm.
at one point, I almost gave up on the movie because I made half of it and I thought maybe I should just put in my freelance works and make a show reel and show it to them.
Hmm.
I have some animated works. It's okay. I don't have to complete the story. I have some beat. I have a reel to show them.
Yeah.
And then one of my friends told me, it's okay. Your mind is full of chaotic thoughts. It's okay. Just finish what you started.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be perfect,
Yeah.
especially when you're trying for NID and you're trying for masters. You need to do research of the field, and you need to show that you tried. That's
Hmm.
that's what's important.
Hmm. True.
So I guess so. Yeah,
Yeah. There's
that's
a
how the movie
very
came out.
there's a very important thing that you mentioned here. So I hope all the listeners are paying attention to this. It took her 7 months to finish the project, right? And then 1 month for the production, and a lot of time she spent in pre-production to make all the decisions. So very important when you're thinking about portfolio or making projects for your portfolio, things don't happen overnight. You know, I remember even my portfolio was took a long time. So, and it's a process. You see, it's not something, okay, today I decide to make aaj se portfolio start kar dena. No, it doesn't happen like that. So you keep exploring, you do projects, and then eventually they become part of the portfolio. So I hope you're listening to this. I hope you're taking this. It's super important here to for me to underline this fact that it takes time for you to come up with a good project. So I'll definitely be leaving a few links in the description so that you can watch what Malvika has made and her. If you want to go through her portfolio, that'll be. I hope you'll be able to drop the links as well in the description of this video.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So now I want to ask, what was the best advice that you've ever received?
I think well, there are two. One that
Okay.
personally helped me, and one that helps me design wise.
Hmm.
The one that personally helped me was when I was in college and I lost all hope in going into a creative field. And my sister said that you do realize that all is not over, right? You do realize that if you want to be an animator after this college, you can be one. You just have to do your research on what colleges you want to go to, how to pass the examinations that they may have, and you just have to do some research and work towards it. All's not over right now. That really got me through a lot of bad stuff. And design wise, I think this was given to me by one of the students, right now ex-students of NID, when I was calling them all up, and they told me like, if you're looking for passion projects, look forward to drawing or making projects related to the events in your life.
Mm.
So if you want to, instead of making something random, a random idea that pops into your head, try to build on something that has happened in your life. A small example is that if you want to draw something in your sketchbook, you can just uh, draw a bus stand that you went to last week or something like that. Instead of looking into, I mean, it's good to look into Pinterest. Good to look into references. It's important to look into references, but do not uh, do not be so eager to make a project that you would draw to anything. So
Yeah,
once you make it something that related to you, it's going to be unique. And the thing that keeps you, that thing that makes you unique is the stories that you tell,
yeah,
because that's going to be different from what others say.
right.
Yeah, that's the best advice I've heard
That's a
related to this
beautiful,
field. Yeah,
beautiful piece of advice there. And what's the worst one that you
put everything in your portfolio.
have?
Put- I heard this like you should put everything in your portfolio right from the start, like the
Mm,
small doodles that you made when you were a kid
right.
in school. Put
Mm,
that as well because they like to see the growth. No, don't do that.
mm,
Don't do that. It's very important that you show that you've done your research. When I went to MIT ID for their interview round,
mm,
it went well, and at the end of the round, they asked me, like, do you have any questions for us? And I asked them, what is the biggest flaw that you see in animation aspirants that come here every year? And they said that we believe we all are flawed in one way or another, but we do find lack of preparation to be underwhelming. So if you put a bunch of illustrations in your portfolio, it may be very well rendered, but you may not get through because you've not done the research for the industry.
right.
So yeah, that it's important to be precise in the portfolio, but I do
Mm,
believe I overdid it a little bit with the projects, but
mm.
I'm glad that it is where it is what it is right now.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it did work out for you at the end, and I'm glad it did. I'm impressed by the kind of research that you've done into the field that you want to go into. That's amazing. Before we sign off today, I want to ask, when did you come across detox, and how did this help?
I think it was the time when I was uh, looking for interviews of people, and I realized I should look into people. I didn't have a community to grow in. I didn't have an environment to grow in. I didn't know the mindset of designers. I didn't know what design thinking was,
Hmm,
and and I was desperately looking for content, looking for design aspirants or students who made it into NID, into NIFT, or into IDC, and I came across Detox, and I used to listen to it while I worked. As I said, I used to listen to it while I worked. So it used to go on in one end, and I heard that uh, one of the students said that she used to take her sketchbook to a park and sit and draw there from real life, and it was so shocking to me at the time because I couldn't draw. I couldn't do that. I couldn't draw anatomy that fast or that well, and then because people keep moving if you try to draw from real life, and then I realized it doesn't have to be perfect. I just have to draw. So that inspired me to take sketchbook wherever I went to. And there was another student in detox who said that uh, they like the day before the exam they just drew straight lines, like drawing from point A to point B, just practicing lines. That is such a simple exercise, but it helps you to not be overwhelmed by the fear. Like you're practicing, but you're not over practicing. So uh, and there were UX designers talking about their projects, which was quite relatable because I did work with UI UX designers for 7 months, and yeah, so everybody's story had either one or two or even more elements that I personally found inspiring, and just to keep going in the preparation time. So yeah, that's definitely how it definitely helped, and that's how it helped.
And you do realize that your story is also going to be one of those stories that people will be listening to right now.
Yeah, yeah. I was really terrified about it in the morning, like today. I was like, am I going to say something wrong? I'm like, is somebody going to listen to it and say like, oh no, this is not what we were expecting. This is so underwhelming. So yeah,
Don't worry
I
about
hope
it.
at least
It's
one kid
it's
is.
amazing. It's amazing. I'm telling you, like I've listened to all the stories myself, right? All of the stories. So there's a unique element here, and I'm sure this episode it will be super super duper useful because I've been receiving a lot of requests for uh, an animation interview. So I'm glad we could do this, and I'm glad that you've presented all your, the process that you went through in a beautiful way, that people will understand that, what kind of the amount of work that needs to be done before you get into an ID and before you even appear for the exam. Thank you for joining me today, and thank you for sharing your
Thank
journey.
you for having me. Thank you for having me. I consider it an honor to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. All the best as you walk into an ID pretty soon.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All the best for Detox as well. It grows
Thank
even
you.
more. It's already amazing. I know a lot of people would have taken a lot of advice from all the people over here and from the host itself. So
Thank
yeah,
you.
it grows even more.